was hearing the previous speakers and I was wondering that, this group here obviously understands marketing, obviously understands technology. So what is it that I'll tell you that you don't know? Specifically in today's world, the opportunity for technology to influence every aspect of our lives, whether it is marketing, whether it is delivery or engineering or customer service or product development. Tech is no longer that side group or ERP or EDP which you used to call earlier as people who would probably support a certain function of it. Tech is today right integrated into everything we do. And it's not a new thing. MarTech as a word evolved years back because marketing and technology cannot be dissociated. It's absolutely an integral part of what that opportunity with marketing lies. And I was thinking that, what changes do marketing professionals want to do? What do consumers like us, when we wear the consumer's hat, look at marketing and technology? Half the time there are, we heard people in the previous panel talk about AI, machine learning, and so forth. Personalization. A common theme that came across from that discussion was primarily saying, how do we personalize everything? How do I get to you, you, and you in a way where you feel that you are the one who is primarily being taken care of? Obviously, we know tech is the only world. Though I belong to a company which is primarily into services, we know we don't have, in spite of having 160,000 people in Tech Mahindra and probably TCS having a few million people, we can't have enough people to target the whole population of India individually. The only way to do it is through technology. But we also know that there are a few things that technology is also pushing people away from. For example, half the time you'll hear people making conversations saying, this whole aspect of Google or Alexa at home or anything of a device is constantly listening. And therefore, how much do I trust? How much do I make sure that people are actually selling me products that are right for me versus what are right for only the product brand? So as technology evolves, one big graph that, I think a year back, World Economic Forum did a study on how does trust levels start to plateau down, because that's a big issue that the world is dealing with, where sales and personalization is increasing by the day. Any of you choose, like I keep choosing, saying, what is healthy food to eat and what do we need to do to exercise. I've stopped Googling about how to grow hair on my head because that Google has given up. But I think the whole idea is, as soon as you do a Google like that, it's soon the next set of ads on any of your platform is all about that. So then you worry about saying that, what is this situation that I am in, where there is, there is no data privacy, there is no, there's an issue about what is being sold to me. Is that absolutely right for me, or is it right only for the brand that is selling into me? What's the role of technology in that? And I think that's a discussion and a debate that we will have to do, especially in India, as we are an economy which is on the surge. And today, the talk or the presentation of the slides that I have tried to put together is primarily about the opportunities in India, but also the challenges in India. What do we see as a challenge as we grow our business here? Because, we all know, and I'm sure all of you as marketing professionals know well, that with the advent of Gen AI, there is the use of technology or use of AI in marketing is almost like going back to the future. Because in earlier days, you would give a brief to a creative agency and they'll come up with a creative ad on what to need to do. It'll go through a few rounds of discussion and then they'll come back with it. But today, if any of you are using, I'm saying most of you are, I guess, an application like DALL-E, you can give it one prompt or a Jasper, and you can give it another prompt, and all of you I'm sure use ChatGPT. You give them one prompt and you'll get 6 options on what to do. You just heard about the gentleman from Maruti talk about the study in Harvard about what people like and what people actually end up liking. Between liking it to come from human beings versus when they actually chose the ads, they happen to be Gen AI generated. So in that world is what we are living in, where we cannot avoid technology. We will start getting a lot more of it, but we are also having a very strong feedback, especially from your new generation of buyers, the millennials, the Gen Zs, and so forth, who will constantly question the trust level of each of these products and each of these brands. Let's see if we can address some of it. Let's see how we can make it a different version of it in India, and how the whole Indian consumer market, which is rapidly growing and which will only grow at a much faster rate, especially with tier 2, tier 3 and rural India coming into the base of this whole marketing spend. Obviously today India is on the cusp of greatness, right? We've seen this growth tremendous, and as the world looks at slowing down because of geopolitical reasons, we see a very different India, which is actually, and probably one or two other markets, maybe Saudi to a certain extent, and India are probably the flag bearers of growth. And this growth, we know, is here to stay. This is not something which is a flash in the pan. This is something that will probably has tremendous opportunity. If you take any aspect of our business or if any aspect of our economy, we have tremendous opportunity to grow in every aspect, whether it's number of people flying, percentage of the whole population, number of people using hotels, number of people using restaurants, number of people buying from garment shops, number of people doing e-commerce. Each of them are at a percentage where the larger number of, a 4x number of opportunity lies in able to capture the untapped in our world. And that's what shows that we not just have the 5th largest economy in the world, but also future landscape which is extremely progressive. We have a progressive landscape of about 29% increase, 3 trillion household spending by 2027. This is tremendous. I mean, the opportunity of this is to be captured by all of us here, and that's where MarTech starts to play a role. And 33% of the country's population is in this group that I was talking about, which will start to question the value of a product beyond just being personalized. What is the intent behind personalization? And how can tech in India be a little more enabled in that aspect? If you look at the challenges and then the opportunities, obviously there is a whole host of challenges that we are in front of. There's significant income disparities. I was told that one of the big challenges in spite of our GDP growth that we are looking at is that 50% are worse off from the pre-COVID to now. In that world we are living in, where the disparities are starting to increase, and therefore the trust on products will start to become a very, very important part. And that's what technology should be able to enable us to do. The infrastructure gaps. We've done tremendously well over the years in terms of getting towards infrastructure, not just physical infrastructure, but digital infrastructure. You can do payments, you can do infrastructure thanks to the whole cloudification of our applications, and the ability for broadband and internet, and now with 5G coming together, is such a tremendous boon for marketeers, for products to reach to different places of the world. The digital divide still continues. I mean, we have a very significant amount of people who are either being able to use digital for doing business and for commerce, or we have a significant number of population which is not being able to use, probably only being used to drive for entertainment. And therefore that digital divide is constantly increasing. We have a very complex regulatory environment. I mean, the whole aspect of it, not just because of government, because of the disparity of the businesses that we operate in. So you have segments that behave differently in terms of the target segments we are talking, but also the buyer behavior and the whole impact of World Trade Organization. You have now got more pressure on bilateral trade organizations. You have organizations and groups being formed like the Quads, which are, so it's rendering WTOs and so forth almost, useless in certain aspects of doing trade, which will bring in more regulatory complexities because you will do certain things for certain countries, but you won't do certain things for certain countries. That's how it will operate. That's the new world we are living in. And, frankly speaking, I was in a meeting with some of the trade bodies as part of our NASSCOM role, And the message that I was getting constantly was saying that, do we as a country really matter? I won't name the country, but the countries were really talking about saying that, is there value in us doing it? Because you guys seem to flaunt every WTO rule that's in. But that's the role of the world, that consumer behavior is changing. We have to do the right things for our country, and we'll have to do it with more bilateral and quad type of setups. And the final one I said is something that I think is the biggest point that marketeers need to be worried about, which is trust. And I think brands that build trust will ultimately be the longer standing brands, which we all know. And the brands that actually invest in building trust and in transparency will start to be the ones that will succeed. With these challenges lie a huge sense of opportunities in front of us. Obviously, areas like demographic dividend, these are significant opportunities. I mean, we talked about it. Talking to airlines companies, they feel such a huge opportunity for them to grow. Incidentally, I'm sure all of you know, we primarily have kept the large amount of the global airline industry alive. There were about not one or two, but 800 aircraft orders given from India. That's the nature of the business and the size of our economy that we are dealing with. The urbanization, the digital literacy initiatives that we are taking in the whole aspect of growing this. So your products will suddenly start to become not just personalized for people in urbans, not just personalized for people in Delhi, not just personalized for people in Gurgaon, not just personalized for people living in and around the Meridian Hotel today, but it's also got to do the same thing for villages and rural towns which are getting urbanized by the day. Now, how do you do and how do you make sure that you're making sure that your context and everything else that you're putting together is right in that aspect for that villager or that rural person to believe that it's targeted to him. E-commerce, we all know, is on a significant boom. Fintech, it's probably seen the biggest, and obviously the government's ability to be able to put the number of DBTs into place and the whole amount of the accounts that got opened in has significantly pushed that number up. But from our aspect of fintech innovation is probably the biggest innovation that we've seen. In terms of all the payments getting innovated, we've seen also the ability for voice-enabled payments. We are also seeing now payments at the micro sense in terms of insurance, in terms of loans. Everything aspect now has gone to the sachet level. And that's the opportunity for even more fintech innovation. And I think this is a leading charter for MarTech to follow. If there is one vertical that MarTech needs to probably emulate from, it's the fintech world. It's really taken off in our aspect and obviously the Jam Stack that the government launched had the most critical role to play in driving that innovation. Startups and innovation we've seen has been critical for India's growth and for employment, but also the government initiatives. So whether it's ONDC or any of these new initiatives that have been launched across, and we are seeing supply chain, we are seeing commerce, we are seeing payments, all of these are tremendous opportunities for all in this room to start looking at what are the new world of MarTech that's going to deliver. Obviously the role of tech in that has been significant. We've seen that as we started to grow from wherever we were in 2010 to now in 2023 to be the 5th largest economy in the world. And each of these, whether it's in the surge in tech adoption or whether it's e-commerce or digital payments, each of them played a significant role in driving the economy. Otherwise, this economy, and we saw that whatever downturn we faced during COVID, it had impact on companies realizing in the next year and a half, the last 18 months since COVID, to splurge on technology. And the whole reason for splurge on technology was to make sure that when we realized when COVID came and hit us, that the biggest opportunity that we missed out or the economies that missed out was because they were not tech enabled. Their supply chains were not technology enabled. Their marketing was not technology enabled. The product reach was not technology enabled. And that's the only way out. And I think in certain times, and I think like the internet, COVID was probably the biggest inflection point in this century so far. Obviously a bad one in the sense that lives it took. but also from a technology point were the biggest inflection point because it changed the way we look at businesses and approach it. If we did not have the UPI and the digital payments in place by then, I think this economy would have been in a very, very bad shape than where we were. But going forward, obviously, there is a huge amount of opportunity in boosting the consumer economy. As we start to drive growth, as we start to drive significant amount of opportunity areas, I think the big opportunity areas lie in enhancing efficiency in every aspect of it, whether it's in marketing, whether it's in financial inclusion, whether it's in supply chain, and the emerging tech around it. Gen AI, AR, VR, or 5G, AG, 6G type solutions are driving the whole growth towards driving us towards becoming what the government and the Prime Minister are clearly driving towards is becoming the third largest economy. Therefore, the biggest, fastest way that marketing can adopt, and one aspect of it which is really where the waves are getting created, is generative AI. And I strongly feel that the adoption of generative AI in every aspect of it, whether it is in the area of product innovation, and because the whole aspects of marketing will define this. You will see product innovation coming out of Gen AI, where you will not just from asking ChatGPT and telling you what product to innovate on, but the whole concept of the large language models. You've seen huge amount of debate that's happening on large language models. And now every company or every industry is starting to think about how to use language models that are specific to them and create the data and the base around it so to be able to use this capability effectively. So that will start to build to you that industry-wide large language models, and that's a role that product companies or product officers will use to drive innovation in. You no longer, not only will you do hackathon with people that's coming together and doing the product innovation, but you have then a huge base of people or data points that are driving to you to give you inputs on your innovation. You're not limited by the number of people. We've already talked about things like DALI, content creation. It's a critical part of that whole journey that we are looking at in terms of content creation, and it will start to become every aspect of it, whether it is videos, whether it is metaverse we heard in the previous conversation, or whether any of the Web3 technologies. If your MarTech solution is not pushing the boundaries around that, you will face a challenge in terms of how to be competitive leveraging Gen AI. But the one big challenge that marketing managers and MarTech professionals will have to deal with is the second last point, which is kind of related with what we deal with in terms of fake and fraud detection. As we start to grow this world of AI, as we start to grow this world of Gen AI, one of the big challenges that we will fill, and I'll bring towards the same discussion that we started with, it's trust, and trust that you build on your product is going to be built on the fact that how Gen AI enables you to drive fake and fraud products in the market. How do you enable your consumers? How do you engage and make them aware, make them knowledgeable, make them easily accessible for them to be able to use the fact that your product is the right product and not the fake product? How do they use tools that they can trust? That will define whether they are successful or not. So as a nation, as I finish, as a nation, we are willing to adopt technologies. What we have to ask ourselves is how much are we spending time on educating customers on how to use technologies. The companies that are building their products and brands and leveraging MarTech effectively are those who are delivering on the outcomes of their consumers. Their consumers need to be educated so that they choose the right product and not have an issue related to the trust. Thank you and wish you a great conference.